Welcome back to another episode of the Elite Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Kiran Prakash. Today, we have someone who has shaped the way develop think about software architecture in .NET ecosystem, Jeremy Miller. Jeremy is the founder of Jasper FX Software, the project leader behind Martin and Wolverine, and an open source pioneer who has been shaping enterprise systems for decades. Before we dive in, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by NeuroAgentic AI Labs, your growth partner in deploying AI employees and multi-agent frameworks for B2B SaaS companies, helping you automate marketing, sales, fulfillment, and finance without needing to hire an internal AI team. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here today. Still cringing a little bit to hear that I've been doing this for decades, though.
Um, yeah, you started your career building what you call the shadow IT applications. Can you tell us how that curiosity led you into the software development?
Sure. So I came out of college as a real engineer and working on building and designing petrochemical plants. Really boring, not that exciting. If I paid attention in college, I would have realized that I really enjoyed the coursework where we got to write code to solve problems. Um, but I didn't pay attention, so I came out as an engineer. We got out into the real world. What was happening was, this is an era before things are very connected. And there were a lot of times when you would type the same information in three, four different places. Word documentation to document something, calculations over here. And I started writing little VBA scripts and access stuff to automate some of the engineering documentation we had to create, just as a way to save work. And doing this on like classic ASP very quickly caught on that, hey, I enjoy this a lot more than my engineering work. And this is during the first .com boom. So it was like, hey, let's try to get into the software thing.
Okay. And what was it like transitioning from building quick internal tools to working on mission critical supply chain software at Fortune 100 companies?
Yeah. So I went from just 3 years time from doing shadow IT stuff for my internal engineering department to kind of accidentally ending up being in charge of a mission critical supply chain application. I'll tell you that I probably had a lot of trouble with at the time a very waterfallish CMMI wannabe kind of process and environment. I was extremely fortunate that I had very good management that kind of acted as that kind of umbrella on top of us, so I could just go do things. We had this magical moment where we had very good collaboration from the business. The business partners had a very clear idea of, hey, here is the opportunity to go do something. And I wouldn't say it was a very typical environment, but I got to have an easy transition really because of the support around me. So where I was just enabled to go make things happen.
Excellent. And you mentioned waterfall, and now my next question is around ThoughtWorks, who champion in agile development. And you were part of ThoughtWorks, and what lessons from that era still guide your approach today?
A lot. So, just in case your listeners are not familiar, ThoughtWorks was and is very high-end software consultancy, very deeply involved, especially early days of agile development. But specifically, they were one of the leaders of extreme programming. In the happy idealistic days before the Scrum people took over and gave us a bunch of silly stuff. Um, so the big lessons that still matter, the importance of feedback cycles in software development. So how you manage complexity up front, being kind of more intelligent about delaying the introduction of complexity as much as possible. We already said the feedback loops, and then the single most important thing I learned in my time at ThoughtWorks, on top of the collaboration, the feedback, it was understanding that as a developer, just anybody on your team, you should exert control over your engineering process. If your engineering process is not working for you in that given point in time and team and problem domain, you can just change it to something that actually works. Take control of how you work in a different situation and never assume that something that worked on the previous project applies directly to the next project. That's the single most important lesson I learned from my time at ThoughtWorks.
Yeah, I still remember with ThoughtWorks, they had something called cruise control and the whole
Mhm.
agile development. It was excellent to see how every stage works in action. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Oh man, I'm killing myself. I'm forgetting names. Let me give you a shout out to former colleague Mike Roberts at a couple different companies, but Mike and another fellow from the Calgary office created cruisecontrol.net on the .net side, and that was
Mm.
my own first foray into continuous integration. Which at this day and time, it's all built into GitHub for us, but that was such a revolutionary thing back then, and how important that still is today.
Excellent. And you have been deeply involved in open source with projects like Marten and Wolverine. What inspired you to commit to open source so heavily?
So it really does date back to my time at ThoughtWorks. I wasn't there very long, but it was very influential in me. I was around so many people who were so active in open source. I mean, some of the very first in-unit tools came out of .NET Space. In-unit came out of ThoughtWorks, CurseControl.net. The first IOC containers in the world came out of ThoughtWorks London. Gherkin later on. There's just so much going on. So, I was obviously inspired by them. And hey, I wanted to be one of the cool kids in ThoughtWorks too, right? So, I actually wrote a tool called Structure Map that was the first IOC tool for .NET. Kind of off to the side, other ThoughtWorks colleagues kind of encouraged me to release it on SourceForge back in the day. That's how old I am. But what I caught on to very quickly is I really enjoyed doing the development tools like that, probably a little bit more than building feature work. And I've known for 20, 25 years that, hey, this is what I actually want to do for a living.
And you have recently emphasized Jasper FX commitment to an open core model. Why is that important in today's software landscape?
Well, first, let's start by answering that with the question, or really say, I hope it's important. Um, so, at least in the .NET world, there's been really ugly recent backlash against some long-standing open source tools that have flipped from being what previously open source model to the next version being, hey, we have to make a living. This is too complicated to maintain. We're going to make this commercial license from here on out. Seems like a perfectly rational, reasonable point of view for me, but it's caused a really nasty backlash in the .NET community. We're hoping to do this a little bit differently with Marten and Wolverine, follow that open core model and saying the core products are going to remain under the MIT permissive license here on going forward. But we are going to commercialize it through a service model, a support contract, consulting, and as well as commercial add-ons for observability and a control panel. We're hoping that this kind of finds a sweet spot and kind of finesses the situation of we are going to make these tools be viable in the long term because it really takes me and other folks being full time on these tools for them to be able to just exist in the level of complexity they are. But you also know that, hey, these things are going to remain open source. You can trust that if that's something that is very important to you.
So, and what role do community-driven projects play in shaping the future of enterprise development?
Hopefully, they play a lot. So, as opposed to everything coming in the .NET world, is everything going to come down from .NET? Is some random team in .NET going to be tasked with building the new eventing framework? The value of a community-driven project, and I can definitely speak to this in the last through with Martin, but especially in the last couple of years. It's like shining a flashlight into all the real problems that people face using a tool like this, what these tools need to do, what are the common usages, what elements of the framework are confusing for users. It's all about the feedback cycle. One of the things I kind of maybe get a little agitated or irritated about is people online maybe being a little bit cocky, maybe not knowing what they don't know and saying, oh, I don't need to use an off the shelf tool for asynchronous messaging or event sourcing because it's not that hard, right? I can just build things in. And the reality is, a tool like a Marten and now a Wolverine, they've been beaten on by so many different people that we take care of we solve problems that you may not even know you're going to have yet because someone else has been there first, has run into problems and told us about it, or jumped in with pull requests or GitHub issues and provided feedback to us to know that, hey, we need to address this, whether it's versioning, concurrency, error handling, more error handling, production move. You know, having a community banging and beating on a tool and feeding into it is far better than some random team just suddenly being tasked to go make the ultimate eventing framework, having no prior experience in the problem domain.
Do you think there's like with all this vibe coding and all these new tools, AI tools which has come up, Lovable or Base 44 or anything where you can vibe code everything? Do you think it is going to affect the community? Like because I see a lot of people who have zero experience and building this and they're unable to manage these systems, and I think still the community is very core. Like, what do you feel? Like, is there a threat to the community from these tools?
It's going to be yes and no. It's going to be an adjustment. I don't know how it's going to work. Be kind of the old crusty guy opinion that kind of the general idea, well, maxims we've heard all our career that holds true is you should have a good understanding of whatever the at least one layer of abstraction below whatever you're used to coding. You kind of need to know how, if you're using an ORM, how does the database actually work? Um, Even doing high level business applications, it's good to know how does garbage collection work. And what I wonder about is people coming in and even these higher and higher levels, not understanding, not having gone through the toil and tribulation of what is underneath it. Is that going to be a severe problem? I think so. But the counterexample, I guess, would be, kids today learning to drive. Automatic transmissions are really good. You don't have to learn to drive a stick at all. I don't think you even need to know how a transmission works anymore. So I don't know if it's going to be like that or if this is going to be a real problem because people get to skip so far ahead into their kind of their journey as a software developer.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. Like as you mentioned, people should at least know one layer down the abstraction. Like that's very key. People just go and develop these software, and then, and when it goes wrong, they don't know how to fix it. Like I think that's key learning as well. Yeah, and how do you balance running a business and also being active and giving back to the open source community?
I'm the wrong person to ask because my business is the service model right on top of a community open source model. Um, I will say that I am struggling a little bit and trying to set some boundaries on how much free community help do I give in Discord or GitHub or other channels versus, hey, I mean, I've got to prioritize clients for this. Um, so I don't. Those are a lot of issues I'm struggling with myself right now.
So, yeah, developers today are navigating microservices, event sourcing, and distributed systems. Where do you see teams struggling the most right now?
I mean, there's a handful of issues. With event sourcing, only because this has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks. It's Most of this has come up in a world where a relational database is just the default state of everything. Um, Even myself, I built more systems on relational database than anything else. So people making the transition from a relational database view of the world, how it's modeled, also having the idea of one source of record period, and then trying to transition to using more document databases, NoSQL, and especially event source. That context switch, or it is a real paradigm shift. That's something you have to work with a lot of clients with, and a lot of people on Discord. Beyond that, it's concurrency. If you're going to say that you're going to want to use asynchronous messaging of some sort to build almost any kind of robust enterprisey system, it's almost inevitable. That's creating all kinds of challenges, the tracing, how to debug things. But concurrency I think, is the single biggest source of problems and questions and confusion for my users and clients. And a lot of things around resiliency, but shifting to the paradigm shift to event sourcing, concurrency, and resiliency, I think are the top three of sources of problems, questions that land on my doorstep.
Yeah. And how does Martin and Wolverine simplify these challenges?
So, well, Martin, by itself, Martin is the singular most robust tool set for event sourcing in a .NET framework. Um, there are a lot of hard problems that we can make easy. The concurrency issue, Wolverine and Martin both have a lot of support for concurrency controls, retries on concurrency exceptions. The Wolverine 5.0 release, which knock on wood is going to come out my evening this evening, has a huge new feature for managing concurrency in your application of being transport agnostic, regardless of whether it's RabbitMQ, Kafka, whatever you want to throw at it, or even just purely local. Wolverine is going to have a way to kind of segment work by user-defined business entities, in such a way that we're going to allow work to happen in parallel, but work within a related business entity will always be sequential as a way to almost completely sidestep concurrency problems. When I say concurrency problems, it's trying to touch some kind of business entity at the same time, or something where the order is very important. Wolverine's about to take a massive step forward in your ability to manage concurrency, and that's something I'm really excited about right now.
I think that looks like a key feature on all the best for the release today. Okay.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, this question comes up quite a lot. Like, if you were to advise a team modernizing a 10-year-old like monolith, where should they start and where should they begin with like to microservices and stuff?
So, not necessarily maybe microservices. So, if you have not seen it, there's a very old software book, Michael Feather's book, Working with Legacy Code. I think it's almost 20 years old. It is still relevant. Go find a copy of it somewhere. You want to try to identify places where maybe there aren't seams today, but you want seams. And when I say seams, what I'm really looking for is how can we create testing coverage for this? Because my assumption is, let me back up. My assumption is you probably don't have adequate testing coverage of it. That's almost always true of a legacy system, because if you had good test coverage, you wouldn't be calling it legacy. Um, so a lot of that book, it's about the challenge is how can we retrofit some level of characterization testing around the system so that we have a safety net to know have we broken the system or not before we even try to make any changes. I think that's first. Second is you're inevitably going to look for some kind of strangler pattern. For if folks aren't familiar with that, you're looking for ways where you can break off pieces of the application and move it into a totally new application. Just module at a time, have it work the exact same way. So you're starting with the characterization test we've tried to build. This is how the system works. Pull pieces of it out and be able to use the same characterization test to say, hey, this is really working. It still works the old way. Your massive challenges are you really want it to work the old way. Does that frequently lead to recreating bugs in your system? And the other challenge is you go in this with a tremendous amount of patience. This is something that's going to take a long time to do it. You're going to need management support to enable you to be able to do things. And then, not that I'm an expert on this, I've seen just a really cool talk of people using AI tools for strangler patterns. AI tools being able to kind of monitor the before and after behavior of a little bit of a new strangler system versus the old. That's a real place where AI might be useful. Just having it look for trends and spotting trends of, hey, the new system's behaving differently, or this is becoming, you are getting errors in the new system with some kind of trend of inputs that aren't necessarily obvious.
Yeah. And also probably, as you mentioned, to start with that test framework and then go like make the transition. That's very key. And I think, and even in that place, AI might help, right? Like to generate these test cases and might be useful at that place as well. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't even think about that, but yes, I mean, reading more and more people doing that. I'm more interested. Fortunately, you don't have to work with that much legacy code, or when I do, it's always a one-off thing. Really interested right now in. I've seen some examples of people starting with Gherkin. The old agile holy grail of can we start with fitness tests or cucumber tests, describe the system in an executable specification. That might be becoming actually more realistic all these years later of people starting from Gherkin specifications and using that to generate skeletons of code. I've seen some people do some really cool stuff. Consulting company here in Texas called Improving, um, building a skeleton of Martin event store code starting from a Gherkin model. Um, I think that's going to be a really cool utilization of AI.
That'd be great. Yeah. And yeah, you have gone from being hands-on developer to leading architecture teams. Has How has this leadership style evolved?
Well, and then just make sure everybody knows I am still very much a developer. Uh, so that was a you referring to a previous role, and I mean I got to say I kind of enjoyed that. It was a lot of one-on-one meetings of hey, what are you going through? What's challenging? I mean, I did spend some time in all their code bases, so I had some contextual information, but a lot of it was talking through how are you communicating to the team? How can you communicate to the team, getting your ideas across, but then also helping them kind of talking through a lot of it was for us at the time was modernization. How do we go from, these clean architecture monoliths that are inevitably have so much unnecessary complexity? How can we get these simplified? How can we improve your test automation? But at the end of the day, I mean, to bring it back, I think the biggest thing was talking to them about how to better communicate.
Makes sense. And how do you see Jasper FX software scaling in next few years?
So, again, knock on wood. Um, Hoping to double in revenue in the next couple of years, and probably going to be just adding contractors. Um, it might be a little while before we get to the point where we have more full-time people, but hopefully if we have this talk in 3 or 4 years, we're about a 10-person company. So that the biggest thing I think is getting to a world where we can always follow the sun. So our customers know there is always somebody online who can at least start to help solving whatever problems come up.
Okay, and what challenges do you foresee right now to achieve that growth in next few years? Other than you mentioned about contractors and hiring the
So
right.
the big thing for us is we're, and when I say we and us, a lot of times it is the royal we. Um, right now, the company is me, myself, and I, and some occasional contractor help. Uh, right now, it's creating enough revenue streams from recurring support models, and we're trying hard to build a management console tool called CritterWatch. It's already well in flight, but this is going to be everything you need to know. Pride visibility in how is your system using Marten and Wolverine? How's it running? How's it configured? What parts are healthy, not healthy, and giving you every possible tool to hopefully ameliorate problems inside of your system. And there's a lot of kind of administrative tasks that come up with event sourcing. Maybe you need to rebuild a projection. You need to rewind a subscription. Maybe you need to pause processing. Maybe you need to see, circuit breaker stuff. Hey, the system had to turn off listing because it's being too problematic. Go deal with it. Go turn me back on. Um, getting that management console out so we have more recurring revenue.
Mhm.
So we're not quite as dependent upon pure consulting. That's our pivot point. That's what I'm most focused on the next 6 months.
Yeah. And how's do you market it, or like is it just word of mouth? You get more customers, or like how is it
So
positioned right now?
it's a matter of constant consternation. How do you do that? And then pay attention to where people come in. I have some old visibility left over from, years of being visible in the .NET space, from blogging and Twitter and conference speaking. Try to be on every time somebody asks, "Hey, do you want to be on my podcast?" I say yes. Um, trying to write a lot more on LinkedIn. For as much as some of us might make fun of it, LinkedIn right now is the one place where I feel like we get the most traction and attention. Trying hard to start finally getting with it, trying to do YouTube live streaming, showing off anytime we've got something to show off or just here's some concepts. Um, but that's a forever challenge of how to get things known, especially in the .NET community, where it is so focused on Microsoft that it is hard to get attention for non-Microsoft projects. Um, so I can't tell you that I know what that answer is, but we are throwing a lot of spaghetti up against the wall, trying to promote the tools.
Okay. And for developers, what's the single most underrated skill they should build in 2025 and beyond?
Communication. It's your ability to explain things to other developers or non-developers, or explaining to some kind of CTO, getting them to understand what problem is you think you need to solve to help them make the right decision.
I think that's a good answer because yeah, developers usually struggle with like they either go very technical and then make it hard for people to understand the because I come from a core development background and I feel the same like speaking to like different level of people you need to dumb it down or like it's hard. I see that.
I think we need to dumb them down, but maybe don't flood them with technical details that your audience doesn't care about. It's man, I hate to sound kind of this way, but it's empathy. It's understanding the person you're talking to. What do they need to know? What is the
Yeah,
most important thing for them to understand? They don't need to know what your class name is or your method name unless it's another developer. They need to understand, what is the impact of what you're trying to do. So any technical writing, any technical communication, you always lead with, here's my main point, and then back it up. Don't meander through details, just straight up. Here is what I'm trying to tell you, top line, and then you can fill in details and explain it and try to support it.
that makes sense. Yeah. And right now, there are a lot of founders and building new software products. And as I said, like with all this vibe coding and everything, like they want to build many software products. What do you think they get wrong about architecture choices, like in your experience?
Well, and it might be very different. People that are coming up in this kind of new age of AI driven tooling, where maybe business folks can maybe go right to the business concept and bypass the details. I'd say for a little more of our generation, it's being careful not to over design, especially when you're talking about an MVP. Um, Being just absolutely ruthless about what is important for your first release and what's not building in technical complexity for later. We talked about extreme programming before. You pay really close attention to that old the idea of Yagni. You do not add any kind of complexity in that isn't necessary for the MVP. Maybe even assume that the MVP is a throwaway. I've never liked that particular approach, but that could be legitimate. For the people that are coming at it from more of a non-technical standpoint of trying to build use low coding tools to just build their business concept. I think it's just being really ruthless again about the MVP, what features are actually important and what's not. And I mean, some of that it's understanding what are the people that are using your tooling, what do they really need versus what would be, some things that are flashy that would help you sell.
Yeah. And yeah, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
Well, honestly, it would have been, hey, go do this software thing first. No, I was actually in my late 20s before I was a mid to late 20s before I was an official developer. Um, you know, you gave me a list of questions ahead of time, and I've had a lot of time to think about this. And I don't have a better answer than that. I mean, I think my mistakes weren't necessarily made up front. It was kind of in the middle of being too cautious in my career, not taking risks. I guess really what I would say is try to take your big career swings and risks. Do it before you have kids.
That makes sense.
Try. That's what I would say to try to do. I founded Jasper FX when I was 49. You
Okay.
know, 20-year dream, and maybe there's some value in saying don't ever give up. I mean, you're not done until you're done, but also be a little more of a risk taker when you're young.
Yeah. No, actually, as you mentioned, this never um, an age where you can start, but yeah, as you said, like being younger, you can take more risk. But it's always like sometimes you get the ideas and dream, like it never ends. Like and people do stop themselves, they procrastinate or they find reasons not to do, but irrespective of age, it's time to do. Like right now, there's any idea can be made real, right? Like that's the beauty of now.
Yeah, and so it is. I remember what the exact saying it is. Like luck is whenever preparation meets opportunity or something. Um, Kind of being prepared for whenever your opportunity does hit, being able to seize it. I only started my company 2 years ago, but I spent a decade and a half thinking about the tooling and how to do it. I was not starting from scratch when I did. It took a long time for the timing to be just right, but be prepared when your opportunity does come.
Yeah. And what can you suggest some like one or two or three books for especially developers starting now. And because what I see is that they are just starting and they don't know. Like there are so many amazing books like Clean Code and everything. Like they nobody reads that, but that's so fundamental right now. What are the books you
So,
would suggest here?
I'm going to be old school, and to some degree, I'm also looking over at the bookshelf, across the room and behind me. Um, I would actually bypass Clean Architecture, the Clean Coding book.
Mhm.
I don't think that book is as much harmful as helpful. Um, yeah, I feel that maybe that'd be the main thing. I would go old school. I did mention the Michael Feathers working effectively with legacy code that absolutely never goes out of style. Again, going old school, I'm going to recommend Refactoring by Martin Fowler
Mhm.
um, as possibly the single best book you could ever read about low level programming, how
Mhm.
to make your code as understandable as possible, spotting problems, intermediate steps, and how to make it better. You might need to adapt it a little bit, and we're in this world where we do much more functional programming than we did back then. But I think a lot of this stuff really applied to procedural code that matters no matter what. And then for a third, this is maybe a little biased towards the kind of work I've been doing the last 10 years. Um, Again, I'd go old school. I would look for the enterprise integration patterns book, especially if you're going to be involved in any kind of enterprise software development. It's 20 years old. I refer to it almost once a week.
Okay, excellent. And yeah, we are coming close to the end of the episode. And thank you, Jeremy. Like there are a lot of um, new stuff. Like there are a lot of things to think about for the developers trying to build a software, and also you're still hands-on, and that's very key, especially in this when you're leading a team of technical people. Then it's always good to be hands-on, and also thanks for sharing those books. And I think for the viewers, if you find this discussion interesting, please subscribe and leave comments. And also, thanks again to the sponsor, Neuroagentic AI Labs. Um, and yeah, Jeremy, thanks again for joining the episode. Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
thank you.